Good morning. Awareness of the creative mind. What does that mean? What is that law of mind? These are kind of strange sayings if you haven't been around here very long. But in this How to Speak Science of Mind book on page 55, it says, what is the law of mind and how does it work? The law of mind is the creative medium through which spirit, as conscious mind, moves. The law is deductive only. This means it receives the impression of thought and acts upon it, much in the same way the creative medium of the earth's soil receives a seed, never rejecting it. We need to be mindful of that which we think, believe, feel, visualize, imagine, read, and talk about, because it is going into the creative medium of our subconscious mind, which is our individualized use of the universal mind. The law of mind is a blind force and does not judge or question the content of the thought seed. It merely says, yes, it is done unto you as you believe. So, we really need to be consciously aware of what we're thinking. One of my first teachers, Reverend Terry Shea, when I was taking practitioner studies, he brought something to light in one of the classes that was really a moment that was one of those light bulb moments for me. And he was saying that because there's only one universal mind and we're all thinking into it, that if we aren't consciously aware of what we want to create in our life, that the default mode is universal consciousness, or collective consciousness. So that means that not only am I thinking into the universal mind, but everyone on the planet is thinking into the universal mind. And they're calling us now. So anyway, Terry really brought something up that stuck with me, and I was thinking, well, if I'm not consciously creating what it is I want in my life by affirmative prayer and meditation, then what's happening in my mind is is part of the whole collective consciousness of the human race. And that thought was really kind of scary to me. It was like, do I want to be creating like everybody else on the planet is, or do I want to create something more magnificent and beautiful that works better for me? And so that was what has stuck with me all these years. To really be aware of what I'm creating as I think and believe and feel into that one mind. So how do I do this? Well, one of the things that I personally do not do is I hardly ever watch television. And if I'm at somebody's house where the TV's on, I do not want to watch the news. So that is one way that I use creative mind to work in my life, by not watching the news. And I mean, I have people in my life, and I'm sure you do too, that watch the news, and it's just like, it's so obvious to me how that affects their life, their thinking, and it's really one of those things that I'm really aware of that works for me, is to not watch the news. So let's see. The other way that I use creative mind is I spend a lot of alone time and quiet time for myself. And I just pay attention to my feelings and what it is within me that's calling to me. Like what is it that I desire in life? How do I want my life to look? And because I know that my feelings are a compass for Spirit to move through me, inspiring me, and telling me what it is Spirit wants how Spirit wants to show up through me as me. So I do that, and if I get an inspiration, then I sit with it, and I just kind of watch what goes on in my mind and my feelings. It's like, what thoughts come up? Like, I might have this really exciting idea, and then something will come up in my mind like, well, I can't do that. I don't have that experience. I'm not capable. Whatever. And I I just watch those things come up, and I see how it makes me feel. And it doesn't feel very good when that happens. I don't know if you notice that or not. So what I do is I do spiritual practice. I recognize what these beliefs are that are limiting, and then I choose to use positive affirmations and prayer. I actively use my prayer partner, Shara Banbury. We meet almost once a week. And I just begin to change my mind about what these things are that are coming up. And they also need healing. There are things within me that I need to heal about myself. It's like, well, if I'm having those thoughts about myself, then, well, I know that that's not the truth of my being, because we are whole, perfect, and complete, and we're magnificent spiritual beings. So as humans, we get to recognize these things in ourselves and heal them. So changing the beliefs through spiritual practice. It takes a certain amount of time to do that, to actually retrain our brain, the neurons in our brain. And once I can see myself in the picture and have the feeling of what that feels like, then I'm able to manifest that next beautiful desire that Spirit wants to show up as me. So I have a couple of examples. Like several years ago, it was actually the last time I golfed. I was golfing at the Quail Valley golf course, which since has been shut down, which I'm sad about. But it was always really fun for me to go there because we got to hit the golf ball over the barn on hole 9. So the last time I golfed, I hit the golf ball over the barn and walked to the 9th hole, and the ball had landed on the green, which I don't think I'd done that before, but anyway. So that was pretty exciting in and of itself. And then, so it's my turn to try and put this ball into the hole, and it was like 40 feet away. So I'm thinking to myself, there's no way I can get this ball into that hole. So I got up there and I stood there and I recognized what I was thinking. I went, now wait a minute, I can hit that ball into the hole, and I just started visualizing myself. And I just saw in my mind that ball going right into the hole, and sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And oh my gosh, how exciting was that? A 40-foot putt! I was like, that was astounding and really fun. So that's just one example of just being aware of the creative mind and what we're creating. More recently, I've been working with my prayer partner on having some reliable, affordable transportation. And so I had this 1971 Honda CT90 trail bike that I was very excited to be riding, because 100 miles to the gallon compared to my Land Cruiser that was getting 9, I was like, yes. And so I was like working on this thing. I got it running and drove it into town about 3-4 weeks ago, and it died. It died on me, and so I was pretty discouraged, and Shara gave me a ride home. And I've been working on the motorcycle. The forks were leaking, or the seals were leaking, so I tore it all apart, and I fixed those and got the battery recharged. And what was it, last week, I came back into town on the Honda. I was so excited, and it died. It died by the hospital. And I'm like, and it was what, 107 outside. I had on my jacket and my backpack, and fortunately, it was by my friend's house, and I parked it in the garage, and then I walked to Rev Lanny's house in the heat up the hill, because I'm painting her house for her. But anyway, I'm just like, this just isn't working very well for me. And so I got the battery charged, and I drove it directly to Mark's cycle shop. And in the parking lot was this most beautiful motorcycle, my favorite color. You just have to push a button and it starts. And I sat on it, I'm looking at it, and I'm like, wow, that's so beautiful. I sure would love to have that motorcycle. And then those thoughts came up. Well, I don't have any money to buy a motorcycle. I must be crazy thinking about buying a motorcycle. Well, let's see, it's not all that safe. There's only a couple more months of summer, and all these thoughts came up, and I basically left and went away, and for the next, 4 or 5 days, was trying to convince myself not to buy this motorcycle. And, it really appears that I'm having a midlife crisis. And unfortunately, I know that it's all good. And so I started thinking about that. Well, I'm only going to have one midlife crisis, right? I should do it up, and I started thinking about myself on that motorcycle. And just the joy that I started to feel being on the motorcycle in my mind was like, well, maybe I should get the motorcycle, And so I went back to Mark's cycle and I said, Mark, I'm thinking maybe I should drive that motorcycle. And he goes, well, are you ready to buy? I go, well, I don't know, but I need to drive that motorcycle. And so we got on a few days ago and drove it up by Crown Point Circle, and I fell in love. And I was just like beaming. I was so full of joy, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I should definitely buy this motorcycle. So I went back and I said, okay, so what's it going to be out the door, whatever. Anyway, I didn't have the money, but God in my life shows up as friends that do have money. So, so I bought the motorcycle. I got it yesterday, and I'm just like, this is so cool. I love it. I was like having so much joy just coming to church today, So that's just another small example of how, feeling what how Spirit wants to express joy through me, and recognizing what beliefs pop up to keep me from that, and then changing my mind and being okay, just being okay with being in joy. Oh my gosh, what's wrong with that, right? So I just want to bring you back to that last sentence that I read in here, where it's talking about universal mind, and it says, and it always says, yes, it is done unto you as you believe. And so I hope this helps you think about being more aware of that one mind that we're always thinking into, and how we're always creating with our thoughts. Thank you.
Awareness of the creative mind. We believe the universal spirit, which is God, operates through a universal mind, which is the law of God, and that we are surrounded by this creative mind, which receives the direct impresses of our thought and acts upon it. The teaching symbol. This creative mind is that soil that Julia spoke about, is in the center. And I'm going to speak for myself and my thoughts, but thoughts in general come from the top down into that creative soil, and that's that yes energy. That's, we were taught by the same minister, Rev. Shea, and Terry Shea, and it was the yesness. I always knew that whatever I put in there, God said yes. That creative mind said yes. And then the bottom section is where it manifests in this material world. Page 494, Science of Mind, the renewing of the mind. Whatever the mind holds and firmly believes in forms a new pattern of thought within its creative mold, as whatever thought is held in the mind tends to take outward form in new creations. This is the secret and the whole secret of the creative law of mind. When I first discovered Science of Mind in 99 or 2000, the direct impressions of my thoughts into creative mind were bondage, compulsion, separateness from God and others, limited resources, fear of the unknown, and I was alone and fearful, even in a crowded room. This is what I realized that I was feeding into that soil. Then upon my first visit to the church, Reverend Terry Shea said to me, he said it to the whole congregation, but it felt like he was talking directly to me, "You are whole, perfect, and complete just the way you are." And I believed him. And I don't know why I believed him at that time, but I was ready to receive that information that I was whole, perfect, and complete, and it changed my life. I learned to surrender my reactive thoughts to the loving, creative mind of God, and Reb Terry taught me how to do that. The first principle is goodness. This is what I learned. And insofar as our thought and action tend towards the constructive program, with it eventually succeed. We cannot fight the universe, which I've come to call God's will. It refuses to be budged from its course. We can only go with it. And that's letting go and letting God. My new beliefs. This is after years of science of mind classes, which I dove right into. I mean, it made such an impression on me as I started taking classes and never stopped, basically, because I was hungry for this information. It had a teaching symbol. It made sense. It wasn't some woo-woo, okay, just trust. It was like there was a mechanical science to this new way of living and thinking and believing in and knowing that there was a loving God. So I just, really dove into it head first. So after years of Science of Mind classes, going to retreats, doing workshops here, and also a 12-step program, the creative mind now receives the direct impressions of these are the thoughts that I have now. I'm not alone. Surrender, and it's not giving up. It's surrendering to the winning side. Someone taught me that. I like that one. Oh, I surrender to the winning side. God is my source and supply, not my boss, not the next escrow, not, anything but God. And when I open to that infinite knowingness, anything is possible financially. And, God does show up in many ways and in many forms. And money is just one of them. But, me, I had been in 100% sales for many, many years, commission sales. And so I always thought it was me. And that was very stressful, that it was all me. And then when I learned the concept that it's actually God through me, and my clients are also God, and that I'm there to serve them, and we're both here to reciprocate something greater, and that I just happen to get compensated for it, and that's the bonus. It's a perception of what I'm doing. Am I getting or am I giving? What a concept. And I learned that here. I learned humility, and it's not humiliation, it's humility, and that I'm also a recovering control monster. So humility plays a big part in that, is it knowing I don't know everything, but there is a loving God that does. Wow, I get to give up to that loving God and know that, this or something better. Or that's one of my favorite when I'm having issues. This or something better, or something greater is trying to be expressed here, and I just don't have the wherewithal right now to see what that is. But I know if I truly have a loving God, that something greater is trying to be expressed here. It may not be what I want, but not always what I want is what I need. So I'm learning that too, my needs and wants. And sometimes my loving God knows them much better than I do. Surrendering to God's infinite resources. I learned to trust. That was a big one. I really learned that trust was about trusting myself. It wasn't about others. I learned to trust you after I learned to trust myself. And learning how to quit betraying my inner thoughts and desires of goodness and not of destruction. And that was a real eye-opener for me, is when I really learned to care and trust myself. I learned to trust you. I learned to have faith. And that's that not getting immediate gratification, but having faith that things will demonstrate when they're supposed to. Forgiveness of self and others. My favorite, soul retrieval. I don't know where I lost it, but it was gone. And by doing this process and working on this, is I was able to retrieve my soul and have that relationship with a power greater than myself. And then freedom through honesty. In my defenselessness, my safety lies. I used to backpedal on everything, It's your fault, not mine. Instead of just taking ownership and just being honest about, okay, what is my part in things if they do go sideways, or, just basic, what they call cash register honesty, or just really honest with myself and others when it's good, bad, or ugly. And there's such a freedom in that, and just being human in my activities. So the spiritual principles from which I live from are love and forgiveness points the way. The law makes it happen. So if I ever need to do the checks and balances, is it loving? Is it kind? I know if it is, and I know the law will make it happen. Everything begins and ends with God and love. I have to put God and love first in my life. God is my source and supply, and God is all there is. And it's a loving, generative God that's constantly wanting to give, and I only need to look outdoors, or, I don't ever have to look far to know that I have a loving, giving God. So the adoption of these principles through daily discipline has changed my life from surface survival to deep joy, fulfillment through service, love, honesty, and connection. And these are this is the big picture for me. The other demonstrations of stopping myself and going, wait a minute, I'm a practitioner, I can create this. And the story reminded me, your stories reminded me of a time I went to Santa Cruz. I don't know if any of you have ridden the carousel and reached for the brass ring. Is that not symbolic? Okay, so I've been doing this. We used to go when I was a kid. We'd rent a little beach cabin there in Aptos and spend Easter. And so I was never really big enough to reach the brass ring, but I could watch my sister do it with envy. And, she'd lean out and grab and throw the ring and, miss or whatever, or you'd stand and you'd watch people, and the clown's eyes would light up, right, because you're shooting for his little mouth, or his big mouth. So I was there, I think, last year, and or maybe 2 years. I was in the midst of practitioner class, and got on the carousel, and we got the outside horse, and getting ready to grab that brass ring, and bing, and I miss, and I go, oh no, wait, I'm a practitioner. I have to visualize. So what is it going to feel like when it goes in his mouth? So I grab the next ring, boom, it goes in. Bing! I'm just like, no way. All right, okay, don't lose focus. I'm going to do it again. Bing! I did it 3 passes. I got it into his mouth, 3 in a row. I was blown away. My partner was like, oh my God. Go on the curb and start healing people. So it does work. It does demonstrate. For me, I had to talk about how it demonstrated in huge ways in my life. And I am so grateful for the teachers, the teaching, the scientific part of this philosophy. And this is a brief history of my experience with the law of cause and effect, and how the creative mind and the law is always at work, always. And we can work towards distraction and fear, or fulfillment and love. And remember that I am the chooser, and so are you. And so it is. Namaste.